When people hear the name Hammurabi, they think of justice, of fairness, of one of the world's first legal systems. But what if everything you were taught is wrong? What if Hammurabi didn't write his code to protect the weak, but to protect the powerful? What if this ancient stone tablet wasn't a symbol of morality, but a financial weapon? Tonight, we expose the real reason Hammurabi wrote his code, and why the same system still controls you today. History textbooks tell us Hammurabi created justice, an eye for an eye, equal punishment for equal crime. But that phrase alone should raise suspicion, because justice is never equal in societies built on inequality. Babylon was not a fair society. It was a rigid class system: kings, nobles, merchants, laborers, slaves, and the law reflected that perfectly. Before the code, Babylon faced chaos. Debt was out of control. Land ownership was unstable. Workers fled farms. Merchants exploited borrowers. Farmers borrowed seed, missed harvests, lost land, sold children into debt slavery. This wasn't a moral crisis. It was an economic one. And Hammurabi needed order, not fairness. Hammurabi wasn't a philosopher. He was a strategist. His goal was simple: stability equals power. A kingdom where debt spirals endlessly collapses. A kingdom where elites lose control falls. The code was not mercy. It was risk management. Here's what textbooks don't emphasize. Punishment depended on who you were. If a noble injured another noble, harsh penalty. If a noble injured a slave, fine. If a slave injured a noble, death. Same crime, different punishment. That's not justice. That's economic hierarchy enforced by law. Debt was the true enemy. Hammurabi didn't eliminate debt. He regulated it. Why? Because debt creates obedience. Temporary debt slavery ensured. Farms stayed productive. Labor stayed cheap. Elites stayed wealthy. Freedom wasn't the goal. Predictability was. Law doesn't just punish. Law shapes behavior. Hammurabi's code told people who could own land, who could lend money, who could be punished. The law didn't protect people. It protected systems. Today, the stone tablet is gone, but the system remains. Banks write laws. Corporations shape regulations. Debt defines freedom. The language changed. The logic didn't. Hammurabi's code never disappeared. Hammurabi didn't invent justice. He invented controlled inequality. A system stable enough to last, flexible enough to survive, powerful enough to rule. And once you see it, you'll start seeing it everywhere. Every powerful system needs a story. Kings don't rule by force alone. They rule by belief. Hammurabi claimed the gods chose him, that the sun god Shamash handed him justice. This wasn't religion. This was branding. Because people obey laws more willingly when they believe those laws are sacred. Justice wasn't the goal. Compliance was. Ask yourself, why carve the laws in stone? Not for fairness, for permanence, for intimidation, for psychological weight. Power didn't belong to the king alone. Babylon had an elite class: large landowners, temple financiers, merchant lenders. Temples weren't just religious centers. They were banks. They issued loans, stored grain, controlled credit. Hammurabi's code didn't limit them. It protected them. If a poor man defaulted, punishment. If an elite exploited, fine or exemption. This wasn't corruption. This was design. An eye for an eye sounds equal, but equality only exists when everyone starts at the same level. In Babylon, a noble's eye equals political damage. A slave's eye equals economic loss. The law compensated value, not humanity. This is the most uncomfortable truth. Hammurabi didn't value people. He valued productivity. Hammurabi sometimes cancelled debts. Historians call this compassion. It wasn't. Debt forgiveness happened only when revolts were near, armies needed recruits, productivity collapsed. Debt relief wasn't kindness. It was economic rebooting. Clear the slate. Restore obedience. Restart extraction. Laws don't reflect society. They create it. Hammurabi's code defined who mattered, who didn't, what a human life was worth. Once written, inequality became normal. Once enforced, resistance became crime. This is how power survives centuries. Not through violence, through normalization. Look around. Bankruptcy laws, bailouts, student loans, interest rates, same structure, same hierarchy. The poor are punished. The powerful are stabilized. We no longer carve laws into stone. We bury them in documents. The method changed. The motive didn't. Hammurabi never wanted justice. He wanted something far more valuable: control without constant violence, a system that ruled people even when the king wasn't watching. Before Hammurabi, law was memory. Elders remembered rules. Judges interpreted tradition. That was dangerous, because memory is flexible, and flexibility allows resistance. Writing the law did something radical. It removed negotiation. Once written, the law became external, cold, impersonal. People no longer argued with rulers. They argued with stone. This is the birth of bureaucratic power. Hammurabi didn't have enough soldiers to enforce 282 laws. He didn't need them. Fear scales, public punishments, extreme penalties, graphic consequences. One execution saved 1,000 patrols. The code was written to be seen, not read. Hammurabi's laws are obsessively specific. If a house collapses, if a boat sinks, if a surgeon fails. This wasn't legal curiosity, it was risk distribution. Specific laws limit debate. Ambiguity empowers judges. Specificity empowers systems. The more detailed the law, the less room for mercy. Every injury had a value. A broken bone, a lost eye, a dead worker. This wasn't barbaric. It was accounting. Once human life has a price, it can be insured, budgeted, replaced. This is where finance enters morality. Total fairness destabilizes hierarchies. Hammurabi needed tension, enough injustice to keep people striving, not enough to cause revolt. This balance is intentional. Inequality isn't a flaw. It's a feature. Written law doesn't forget. People do. This allows punishment across time. A mistake today can follow you forever. Hammurabi introduced institutional memory. The system remembers, even when rulers change. Power isn't just written. It's built. Gates, walls, courts, temples. These weren't defensive. They were psychological. Every structure reminded people who controlled space and time. No system survives on force alone. The poor must believe. Obedience is moral, resistance is criminal, suffering is deserved. Hammurabi didn't just write laws, he wrote narratives. The greatest trick, making inequality feel natural. Power is not about force, it's about time. Who waits? Who rushes? Who can delay? Hammurabi's laws structured time, deadlines for debt, fixed harvest obligations, permanent punishments. The poor lived in urgency. The elite lived in patience. This asymmetry is intentional, because people who control time control outcomes. Hammurabi didn't just demand obedience, he moralized it. Obeying the law wasn't survival, it was virtue. Disobedience wasn't resistance, it was evil. Once morality is attached to compliance, enforcement becomes automatic. People police themselves. Violence is expensive. Contracts are cheap. Hammurabi transformed force into paperwork. A signature replaced a sword. But contracts are more dangerous. You agree to them, which means you blame yourself when they destroy you. Freedom is unpredictable. Systems hate unpredictability. Hammurabi didn't want free citizens. He wanted reliable ones, predictable labor, predictable taxes, predictable obedience. Freedom threatens systems. Stability feeds them. Laws don't just punish, they instruct. Every punishment teaches who matters, who doesn't, what you're worth. Over time, people stop resisting. They internalize rank. Hammurabi's code gives no reasons, no justification, no explanation. Because explanation invites debate. Authority that explains itself weakens itself. The law doesn't persuade, it declares. Judges interpret. Interpretation creates variation. Variation creates instability. Hammurabi minimized judicial power. The law spoke louder than people. This wasn't fairness, it was automation. Systems evolve. Hammurabi's code wasn't static. It trained behavior, filtered outcomes, selected obedience. Over generations, only compliant behaviors survived. This is cultural engineering. Systems accept collapse. They just postpone it. Hammurabi didn't aim for eternity. He aimed for longevity. Enough time to extract. enough time to expand, enough time to rule. Hammurabi's code speaks constantly, but notice what it never does. It never listens. There is no space for appeal, no room for voice, no recognition of circumstance. Silence is not absence. Silence is design. When people cannot speak to power, they stop imagining alternatives. Silence compresses thought, and compressed thought is easier to govern. Hammurabi didn't ask, "Is this right?" We asked, "What is this worth?" A worker, a wife, a child, a body. Everything had a value. Once value replaces meaning, morality becomes negotiable. Numbers don't argue, they justify. Happiness fluctuates. Predictability compounds. Hammurabi optimized for predictability. The same punishment, the same outcome, the same fear. People learned patterns, and once behavior is patterned, it can be forecasted. Forecasted populations are profitable populations. Pain is shocking. Once repeated pain becomes routine. Law doesn't eliminate suffering, it schedules it. When suffering is predictable, it becomes acceptable. People stop asking why. They start asking how long. What can be measured can be managed. Hammurabi measured everything: time, labor, injury, loss.